Good evening. This is Donna Blomquist, librarian at the LaSalle Public Library. Welcome to tonight's program, SNAP Easy Meals to Make. Before we begin, just a few programming reminders. Tomorrow on June 22nd at 7 p.m. Central Time, the library will offer an evening with Kwame and Wachi as part of the Illinois Library Presents series. Kwame will be discussing his cookbook, My America, Recipes from a Young Black Chef. Kwame will share family recipes and family stories and will discuss the importance of the connections between cuisine, place, and culture. This weekend on Saturday, June 25th, the library will host a BioBlitz event at Catlin Park in Ottawa. The Nature Discovery Walk will begin at 9:30 a.m. Registration is required. We've been watching the weather forecast, and a decision for go, no-go will be made by 5 p.m. on Friday, June 24th. All those who are registered will be notified either way at that time via email. And on June 30th, a Thursday at 7 p.m., the library will present an evening with Michelle Zauner as part of the ILP series. Best-selling author and musician Michelle recently appeared on Saturday Night Live and will be speaking about her memoir, Crying in H Mart. We hope you will join us for these programs. As always, all programs are free and open to the public, so please share. And now I'll close my mic and turn the program over to U of I Extension Master Gardener, Natalie Martin, who will present delicious and economical ways to prepare wonderful meals from your garden or the farmer's market. And as always, please post your questions or comments in the chat. Natalie, welcome.
Hello. Nice to see everybody. This is the sweatiest kitchen that exists. So I hope that everyone just pretends that I'm not overly warm when you're watching this. So thank you so much for joining me. If you are unfamiliar with, if you aren't in Illinois, it is 100 degrees here. So I'm just gonna stand in front of some hot burners for a while. I am going to see if I can spotlight Donna, I'm trying to spotlight my video to make me bigger. Is that something I can do? I'm not sure. Looks like I'm very small from my screen, but maybe it's good for everyone else.
No, you're good.
Okay, perfect. I'm very small on my own screen, so I was worried. So we're going to be doing a couple of things tonight. If anybody is unfamiliar with what the SNAP program is, SNAP now is going, I'm going to switch my thing. So, because I all of a sudden lost all words from my mind, but Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. So if anyone's familiar with the food stamp program is what it used to be called. It's going to be assistance for those who have a limited income. Maybe they have women and children, Women, Infants and Children, WIC is another offshoot program, and it's run by the US government, and it's a way to provide low-income households with additional benefits so that they can supply their families with nutritional foods. The nice thing about the SNAP program is that not only can you use it to buy food at your grocery store, you can also use it to buy plants and seeds so that you can grow your own food. So if you haven't planted a garden yet, you still can go and use your SNAP EBT card to buy some actual plants, and you can grow tomatoes and whatever you want this summer. So keep that in mind. If you do have additional SNAP benefits for the summer, you can go and buy some of those plants and get some stuff done. But what we wanted to do today was show some meals that could be easily modified with different proteins, different supplies, whatever you can find at the grocery store or at the farmer's market. Now, a lot of farmer's market vendors, if they are set up to take cards, can take your EBT, your SNAP EBT card. So that's amazing. That's an amazing thing, because not only are you able to take advantage of those, a lot of times closer to your home farmers markets, you're also supporting a local farmer as well. And the more people that use their SNAP benefits in that way, the more farmers and vendors that will start offering that service, because a lot of times it does cost a fee for a vendor to take a debit card, but if they can do more sales, it will make up for the fact that they have to pay that fee. So it's something to keep in mind. The farmers market in LaSalle here is going to be at Hegler Park. It's going to be right there by the Twisty Freeze, and it's on Tuesday nights from 3 to 6 p.m. We just went a couple weeks ago. And as the summer goes on, more and more vendors will be there because there's more and more produce available. So right now, we're just getting started in the season, but you can find lots of stuff there already. We picked up some really, really good looking garlic scapes, which are like a wild garlic that grows out of the ground. So again, I wanted to do some meals that could be easily tweaked for whatever you or your family is interested in. And we're going to start by making a cooked apple. Now, this is not one of the ones that has multiple modifications, but it is a fun thing to add on. You can do it as a dessert. You can do it as a side dish. If you are a meat eating type person and you do like a pork chop or a pork tenderloin or a pork loin, a lot of those are like pork loins will be fairly affordable. You can find it on sale. You can get it in large quantities if you have a lot of people to feed. But cooked apples go great with it. These apples, I'm going to be doing a Granny Smith. And if I was originally going to use the really wrinkly apples that I have because I wanted to get rid of them, but I'm going to do something else because they're probably too wrinkly for the internet. So I'm going to do a Granny Smith. And another thing that's really great about using Granny Smiths in this way is that they don't turn to mush as fast when you cook them. If you use something like, Red Delicious will turn to mush in an instant, but even like a softer fleshed apple, will start to get mushy after a while. These will kind of hold their shape and hold their texture, and they're really good. So I'm going to peel them and I'm going to cut them, and I'm going to try to switch to my second camera here. Woohoo, look at that. There we go. And I'm going to peel these, and I'm using a Y peeler right now. And a Y peeler, if you can see, it's shaped like a Y. I don't know, I'm all upside down. It's shaped like a Y. The thing I like about it is it's nice and stable. I don't seem to get my knuckles as much. And you get that really satisfying ability to like get your whole apple peeled in like one string. I don't know if anyone else is like that, where you can get most of them off. As always, I like to keep a garbage bowl nearby to get rid of my scraps. I put in my compost. You can also take these apple skins, if you're a saver like me, put them in a separate Ziploc. And when you get a full Ziploc, you can use it to make things like apple syrup. You can use it to make apple jelly, different things like that. So that is something that I do often do, which drives my husband crazy, is keep a bag full of apple skins and cores inside of my freezer. So you can choose to do that or not. It's up to you, but they do really well for animal feed or for compost. So there are things that you can do that aren't just throwing them in the garbage. When you're doing a cooked apple, how fast it cooks is going to be determined by what size you cut it. So as we're going through this, I'm doing about 4 pounds of apples here. And as we're going through this, I'm going to try to cut them in a medium thickness. And I'm going to do it with my mandolin just so that you guys aren't watching me cut up millions of apples. I was going to cut them up ahead of time, but they do turn brown, so I would have had to put them in lemon water, and it was going to be a whole thing. So I am, if you are, interested in using apples in the future, like, hey, I want to peel a whole bunch of apples, or hey, I want to make a whole bunch of sliced apples for my kids' sports team or something like that, you absolutely can cut them up and put them in some Ziploc bags or a big Tupperware full of water with lemon juice in it. And it can be the bottled lemon juice that you get just at the grocery store. But you can cut them up into whatever bite-sized pieces. And this is just the same as like when you go and get a Happy Meal from McDonald's and you can get the apple slices. They are just treated with citric acid, which is basically the same as putting them in lemon juice. So you can like make your own little apple pouches and impress all the other kids on the soccer team if that's something that your family does. Oops, sorry, that was loud. I am going to start cutting some apples, and I'm going to heat my skillet. I'm using a cast iron because I like I just like cast iron a lot, but you can use whatever you'd like. You know, I said I was going to use mandolin, but I lied. So as you see, I'm not going too hard on this core. I'm planning on saving them, so I'm not overly worried about getting every piece off of this apple as possible. When you do cook apples, they will cook down. So keep that in mind when you're trying to decide how much to make. I'm making about maybe 4 pounds of apples right now. So if you're buying them at the grocery store, you know, 4 or 5 pounds. I like to think of it as more than one per person. I'm making it for 4 people. My kids and I are going to eat these and my husband are going to eat these after I'm done tonight. So, so I'm going to want to make more than one per person because they will cook down and take up less space. And the reason that they get smaller as you cook them is because apples have a lot of water in them. And so when you cook them, it kind of takes that water out and dehydrates it. So you are going to lose a lot of that size that the apples have. And of course, you always can cut up some extra ones for yourself to eat while you're cooking. So you can't see it in the picture, but I will switch to a different screen here in a bit. I have a cast iron skillet that I'm heating up. I'm not going to get it ripping hot, but I'm going to get it to like a medium heat. I'm going to put some butter in it, and that butter is going to help brown those apples and give these apples lots of nice flavor. And once they have started to brown and cook, I'm going to reduce the temperature and let them just finish off. And what I'm looking for, you can cook them to whatever temperature you want or at whatever kind of doneness you want. But what I'm looking for is when they've started to brown in some areas and they still have some texture. I don't want to turn them into applesauce. This is without the butter. This is the same way that you would make applesauce. You just put some water in there. I suppose you could use butter, but it just wouldn't be as shelf stable because you're adding that dairy. And then if you did continue again to cook it more, it would turn into apple butter. And apple butter is basically just applesauce that's been dehydrated even more and kind of starts to caramelize. So you can kind of think about that. I like, if I'm making an apple sauce, I like to use a mixture of apples because I like some chunks in mine. But if you don't want any chunks in yours, then you would just use all one kind, something that cooks down like, you know, Jonathan or something like that. All right. If anyone wasn't surprised, I was able to talk through the entire time of making that, of cutting up those apples. So I'm going to try to get a little higher up here if I can. Oh, I sure can't. Let me switch cameras. So I've got my butter going. Bend this down here. All right, I've got my butter going. You can see it is starting to melt. I don't really need to wait until it's melted all the way because it will melt the rest of the way. But our goal here is that I'm going to coat the apples, and you might with the butter, and you might be thinking that this is a very full pan of apples, and it is a full pan, but eventually, like I said, those apples are going to cook down. And we're going to work on some other stuff while that's happening. But we're going to see, you can see I'm tossing them to get them coated with that butter. Oops, I lost one. My goal tonight is to not break anything. I know last time I broke a whole glass bowl, was very disappointing. But tonight, my goal is to not break anything at all. I don't have a ton of glass out here. So, all right. So I've got all my apples separated up so that they can all get coated individually. I want to start getting those up to a nice temperature. I'm at like a medium heat right now. And then you will see they will start to, no, it's not, I was going to try to reach and get that one, but I don't need to burn myself on live TV. So you'll see as these cook, the apples are going to start letting out a lot of water. And that's totally normal. You'll see some liquid build in there, but our goal is to have no standing liquid in the bottom. You might also be thinking that like, hey, Natalie, there's no seasoning in that. And that's totally right. I'm depending on the apples for their natural sweetness here. But if you wanted to add something like an apple pie spice or a cinnamon or something like that, that would totally taste great. I don't have, my kids are, one kid likes cinnamon and one kid doesn't like cinnamon. So I don't always add cinnamon to, so well, they like cinnamon, they just don't want to see cinnamon, I guess I should say. So the reason that I chose to make this tonight, we're going to be making a skillet pasta after this, and that's going to be something that's really nice and has a lot of different tweaks that you can make. But we have, this goes really well with the skillet pasta that we're going to be making. So that, and I was talking about what I wanted to make tonight, and my son was like, oh, well, mom, and he's 6. And the fact that he was paying attention, was amazing. But then he goes, hey, mom, you should just make those cooked apples with this. We love those. So this is a 100% bona fide child recipe, but every person that I've met or that I've served these for, kids, adults, whoever, they all love them. And, you know, the thing I didn't talk about was I used about a half a stick of butter for this. That's going to be up to you. If you want to use like a coconut oil, that would be fine too. I would be really wary about using something like another oil that doesn't have that kind of creaminess to it. You could probably use a ghee, that's a clarified butter. I would be wary about using like an olive oil or something like that, or a vegetable oil, just because they have a very strong flavor. And we want the flavor of the apples to really do all the talking here. And that's why we're not adding extra seasonings, just a little bit of butter to get it going. Okay, so that is ready and started. I'm gonna flip back up here, and I am going to slide that to my back burner, and we're gonna get started on our skillet pasta. So the next thing that we're gonna make, and I've already got a pot of boiling water going here. We're gonna make what I'm calling a skillet pasta, and that's going to be basically a skillet. I'm using a big cast iron because, again, I love cast iron. I'm using my biggest cast iron, and I'm gonna throw everything, all of my ingredients except for my noodles, into here. But at the end, I am gonna toss my noodles in. So I'm doing this skillet. I'm gonna be doing a mixture of onion, red onion, garlic, a little bit of butter, a little bit of olive oil, and then some kielbasa. I'm using a turkey kielbasa. I don't know if you can see it. I choose turkey because it has a lower fat content. It tends to be a little bit more expensive than beef just because it's not as widely purchased, but it tends to have, less cholesterol and less fat and things like that. And it tastes the same to me. Especially with a product like a kielbasa or a hot dog, I find it's very, very hard to tell the difference between the beef and the mixture pork or whatever, and the turkey variety. So I usually choose the turkey. Whatever your choice is great. Otherwise, if you aren't going to do a meat protein, you could do, a cheese or a vegetarian crumbles or something like that. This is going to be, I'll show you at the end, but this is going to be a dish that if you have leftover taco meat, you could do a Southwest skillet pasta. If you have leftover chicken from a previous night, you could do a leftover chicken pasta. So you can really throw just about anything in. I am going to add a vegetable to this. I am going to be adding green cabbage. And the reason that I'm adding green cabbage, well, I wanted to add red cabbage, but they didn't have red cabbage at my Aldi. So that's something that I just, you see what you've got and then you cook with it. And if you've never cooked with cabbage before, this is just a standard head of cabbage, but you can see it comes with this little, this is the stem. This is where it grows out of the ground. So you have to kind of core that. That's very tough. It won't be very palatable, especially if you're cooking for kids or for somebody who has problems with sensations or chewing. So we're going to want to get all of that hard stuff off. So I thought we would start with coring that cabbage. And this is a great way to get something green into this dish, because otherwise it's got that very, hearty, make it through a day on the farm vibe, but we want to get a little fiber in there as well. So I'm going to wipe down my knife. This is just used for apples, so it's not going to hurt anything. And a tiny bit of sweetness is not going to kill us either. Really quickly, before I get going on that, I am using an egg noodle. The reason I chose this is just because it will coat nicely with that. It'll coat nicely with the butter and into the curl around the cabbage and stuff. So again, these are available at any grocery store. When I was originally looking into this program, there was the SNAP program used to need to be used with name brand products. And now you can use it on generics, which is why Aldi is your best friend for something like that, because the majority of Aldi products are generics. They have some, name brand items, but most of them are generics. Okay, so you can see once I cut this cabbage open, I'm trying not to get any good reflection here. When I cut it open, you can kind of see it's got this really tough core, and that's what helps make the cabbage a really hardy vegetable that grows everywhere. But because like a lettuce, it wilts a lot easier. Cabbage does tend to stay. And you can like right now for this part of the meal, I'm only going to be using half a head of cabbage. So if you weren't going to make both of these things in one night, I have put a head of cabbage into the fridge. Sometimes I'll wrap it with a wet paper towel, but sometimes I just leave it cut like this in my crisper drawer, and it'll start to dry out, and you can cut out those oxidized edges, and just the inside will still be fine. So you can absolutely keep this in your drawer, use some one day, use some the rest, another day. Or you can, sometimes up to like 4 to 5 days later. So that's a really nice thing about cabbage, is that you don't have to use it immediately. And, cabbage is one of the bases for a lot of slaws. You can make cabbage, if you use just these outside leaves, you can use you can make cabbage rolls. There's some really nice things to do with cabbage. So when I'm thinking about this, I know that I'm going to be cooking all of this together. So I don't want to have giant thick pieces of cabbage, because I want everything to kind of cook at the same pace. So I'm going to cut it into these tiny pieces here first. Can you see that on screen? I'm guessing not in the center here. These tiny pieces here first, and then I'm going to cut it into chunks after that. Oh, we're doing good. We're only at 6:20. We're cruising. All right. So we got those started. I'm going to I'm going to use half for this part and half for the next part of what we're making tonight. And so we're going to keep everything kind of a similar size. My kids do eat cabbage, but if it is hard or not cooked all the way, kind of tough like cabbage can be, they're not as, they're not as willing, because they are texture people. They don't like a ton of extra texture. Cabbage is another thing that's going to break down and will take that, it'll cook down pretty good. So we want to make sure that that we have enough, because we don't want to, we want to make sure that everyone's got a good serving of cabbage. All right, so my water is boiling over here. Oh, the thing I did not talk about, switch my camera again. We are going to, we're just, just as if you were making any sort of noodle, we always want to salt our water before we boil our pasta, because when you're thinking about cooking a dish, your flavor starts at the beginning. So every single layer of what you're making needs to have flavor. So we're going to salt the pasta water. And I measure with my heart. I do like a small, maybe 1.5 tablespoons for the whole bunch. Some people can do less or more depending on your dietary restrictions or your flavor. I want this to have these egg noodles are nice and thick. I want to make sure that they have plenty of flavor. I'm going to do just a little more than just a little more than half of the whole bag. So maybe 2/3 of the bag, because I don't need all of those noodles. I'm not planning on using them for anything else this week. So a lot of times I'll make the whole bag, and then I will keep, whatever the leftover plain noodles are, and I'll give my kids butter noodles for lunch, or I'll have something else later that week with those noodles. But this time, I don't want to have the leftover noodles. I have a bunch of leftovers, so I want to make sure that I'm only putting in what I'm going to use. And those noodles will stay for a long time. I'll give you, since I'm on this camera view, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. You can kind of see my apples going. I've got some color on them. They're cooking down. We're doing really good. So since my apples weren't all perfectly the same exact, some will get a little more cooked than others, and that's totally fine. We're not perfect. No one's expecting perfection here. Okay, so the rest of our pasta, I'll switch my camera again, is going to be some of this red onion. I chose red onion because of the color, because I like how it looks. And, I was gonna have red cabbage, but, and that would have been a really nice thing to see as well. But red onion is a nice thing to have in there as well. If you prefer one onion or the other, that's totally fine. It's not quite onion time yet at the farmer's market, but it will be soon. My leeks are blooming right now, which means that the onions will be ready pretty soon as well. You will see this is a purple stain from my red onion already on that cabbage. So some of the stuff will take on the colors of other things, and that's totally normal. Again, we're not perfect. This is my favorite way to cut an onion. I don't know if anyone saw that, but what I do is I make some slits, the width of whatever, I don't know if you can see it. There we go. Slits the whatever width of that I want of the onions. And you can see I'm leaving an uncut edge here. And then I turn it and then I make the length of the onions that I want. So I get these nice little squares, like a nice little dice without having to try too hard. All right, so we've got our skillet here. I've got my vegetables cut up. I'm not gonna cut up my whatchamajig. I'm not gonna cut up my kielbasa until I've got space on my cutting board. Like I said, I'm only using a little bit of butter right now. And then and that's for flavor, because I want some nice flavor on that butter. I don't know what those mystery items were. We're gonna pretend like we didn't see them though. We're gonna heat this to about medium heat. And I'm gonna add a little bit of olive oil as well. And again, when you have a big skillet like this, the nice thing is that you're really only using one pot. And so you can, you don't have a ton of dishes. That makes it really easy. And you can you do everything right into this pot. So I'm doing it in stages. So I'm going to start with my onions and my cabbage. And when that cabbage is, because the kielbasa is only going to need like a couple seconds, minutes to cook up and brown. So I want the cabbage and the onion to be nice and browned before I put my kielbasa in. If I put my kielbasa in with it all at the beginning, it can start to dry out and char before I am ready with my cabbage. And then you have cabbage that's not cooked all the way. So you can see I've got all of that starting to melt. I'm gonna put and you're gonna wanna break these big pieces up of cabbage, okay? So if it's a big piece like this, you want to take it out and cut it into smaller pieces or use it for another use. We don't want that big guy in here. We want everything to be kind of a similar size. So we've got our cabbage going, it'll start to sizzle. And we want, again, we're going for some brown food today. So we want it to get nice and charred. I turn my apples off. They can finish cooking and stay warm while we are cooking everything else. So this is kind of this would be, it's got our vegetables, it's got some carbs to fill us up, it's got some protein. If you were going to do, you could do some tofu in here would be great, or any sort of veggie crumbles would be great in this. They've got all sorts of different kind of veggie crumbles these days. So that would be something you can do if you were a, vegetarian or a vegan. Otherwise, pick your protein of choice and you can put it in there. So I have these, I don't know if you can see it. This camera is where I'm at. This is a big giant cabbage vein. It's going to take a really long time for that to break down and cook. So I'm just going to remove it. I understand that's being very discriminatory, but we're going to get rid of it because we don't have time for that kind of negativity in our lives. So we're getting these onions going. Again, I did talk a big game about seasoning from the beginning. So we are going to be very simple. You can choose whatever seasoning you would like with this. I'm just choosing salt and pepper because that allows the onion to come through. If you wanted to add a bechamel sauce to something like this, I don't know if it'd be good with cabbage, but it might be good, if you chose a different vegetable. Maybe you did a broccoli and cheese and noodle skillet with some chicken and did a bechamel sauce with that, that'd be great. And bechamel would just be like if you make a roux, so flour and butter, and then you mix in some milk or whatever. You can do a dairy milk, or you can do any sort of nut milk or milk of choice. Oh yeah, see this guy? No, thank you. Get out of here. Get out of here. We use coconut, or not coconut, we use oat milk a lot in our house. That's our preferred non-dairy milk. I like that the best. It's also fairly, they can make it in a more sustainable way than they can almond milk. So if you haven't tried oat milk yet and you are a non-dairy milk person, I highly recommend it. Okay, so we've got this going. It's going to need a little time here to start caramelizing. So we're going to switch over and start cutting up our kielbasa. And first, I'm going to check my noodles because we have a lot of pans going and I don't want to overcook my noodles. And those are ready. So we'll turn those off. You guys can watch my cabbage for me while I'm doing this. All right. Sorry about the dead air, but I did want to make sure that I rinsed off my noodles. And you might see in a recipe out there, you know, rinsing off noodles after you're done cooking them. And you might have always wondered why you do that. And I'll show you my noodles right now. These are my cooked egg noodles. And when you rinse them off, they don't tend to stick together as much. Noodles are very starchy. And so when you have those hot noodles that you don't wash the starch off, they will just stick right together. And then you have a giant clump of noodles instead of individual noodles. We can get them off again or separated, but we just don't want to have to mess around. I am just sloshing this all over the place here. Oh, well. All right. So we're going to switch over here again to our other camera. And we are going to cut up some kielbasa, and we're going to be fancy tonight. So when you cut your kielbasa, a lot of times you just cut it into little circles. Well, we're going to cut it on the bias tonight. And there's a reason other than just having it look nice. And I'll tell you about it as soon as I get this guy open. So I buy the kielbasa all the time, a lot of times, just like whenever it's on sale or whatever is like that. And I keep it in my freezer. It doesn't take up a lot of space. And it's always there. You can even throw it onto the grill or into a pan frozen. And it will, because it's basically a big hot dog. So like you can, beat it up all you want. So I'm going to cut these on the bias. And when I do that, when I say it's on the bias, normally you cut with your knife. Let's say I want to be in the center here, knife here, but I'm going to cut it at an angle. And when I do that, you can see I have a lot more of this inside, not the casing, but the inside, like I'm going to say flesh, which is a gross word, but you're going to go with it for me. This inside flesh exposed. So that's going to be the nice stuff. It gets nice and browned. So then we're just going to follow kind of like a trace, like we're following each line, and you get these nice on the bias cuts. They look really fancy, but they also have a purpose, which, I love things that look great, but also have a purpose. So when you have more of this exposed, that will char a lot easier than the casing, or it'll just char in a different way, I guess. So I like to do it on the bias, just because it also like takes something and makes it kind of fancy. You know what I mean? Like, look, it's like, I don't know, restaurant kind of stuff right there. So we're going to do the same thing on the other side. My family does eat an entire kielbasa in one sitting. I don't know whatever your family does, but if you are the, kind of household that will not eat a whole kielbasa, when you buy them at the grocery store, just cut them in half right away, put half of it in the Ziploc bag, and then you don't feel like you have to use the whole thing in one sitting. Although this meal will make great leftovers. So, the cabbage heats up really well, it holds together. So you can definitely heat that, you can, put it in a container and heat it up. Now, cabbage is a cruciferous vegetable. And when I say cruciferous, it's a whole type, family of vegetables, things like Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, kale. And when they are cruciferous, they will do this thing called off-gassing. And off-gassing is basically like when you have broccoli and you cut it up and you expose those cuts to air, and then you open your container, and pardon my French, but it smells like farts the next day. And that is the off-gassing of the vegetable. It is not a bad thing. It's totally normal. It doesn't mean that the vegetable has gone bad, but it will get smelly. It'll also be smelly when you heat it up in the microwave at work the next day. So keep that in mind. You will be heating up fart food in your office at work if you are still a person that goes to the office. So you may not have a lot of friends, but it will taste good, and it still will be good. It won't be like poison or anything like that. So I did want to say that too, because a lot of times, you might have broccoli or cauliflower, something like that, and you might have it in your fridge for a couple of days, and it might start to smell. It's totally normal. It's just part of what the makeup of that vegetable is. But you can check, as long as doesn't have any squishy parts, any moldy parts, any actual the fuzz that's growing on it. There's no sliminess. Those things should still be good. Okay, so you can see we've started to get some brown. That's what we were looking for, right? This char on this cabbage. So that's going great. I'm going to let it go for a couple more minutes, and then we're going to throw in our kielbasa. The other thing that we're going to be making tonight is an antipasto salad. And when we're making it, it's basically just cutting things up. So that's the nice and easy part about it. I wanted to make an antipasto salad tonight because it has so many different variations that you can do to it. You can easily transition some of the elements and make it into a completely different item. And it just, for whatever your dietary restrictions are or your family's preferences, you can really adjust it. You might be wondering, Natalie, why are you said this was a family program, but you want me to feed my kids salad. I believe in us. I believe in all of us. I think we can get our kids to eat salad. And if you have a small person or even an adult person in your house and you add enough crunchy items to a salad, they won't remember that they're eating salad. I do make crouton bargains with my children so that they will eat salad, but now I do without a problem. So it kind of works out. This salad is going to be a combination of the leftover cabbage that we have, our romaine. We're going to do some romaine. I'll hold them up to you so you can see it. Romaine lettuce. And a lot of us have seen romaine lettuce, but if you're an iceberg person, if you're a butter lettuce person, if you're a bag salad person, choose your bag salad. That's totally fine. Our cabbage, I'm going to cut it really, really small, like a coleslaw, because cabbage can be kind of tough and chewy, and we want to keep it really small. And allow it, we're going to have it sit with some vinaigrette so that it'll kind of ease up. You might, and then a little bit of bell pepper and some thinly sliced red onion. If your family are not red onion people, or they don't like raw onions, you can choose whatever combination you want. If they're a grape tomato person, throw grape tomatoes in there instead of bell pepper. If you wanted to transition this away from like an antipasto salad into something else, take out the cheese, put in a fruit, you can make it like a nice harvest salad. What's making this kind of an antipasto salad today? We're going to be doing some mozzarella cheese in there. Again, this is a good selling item if you have somebody in your life that doesn't eat salad. Cheese always helps. We're going to be putting some chickpeas in here. This is a vegetarian, not vegan, because we're making it with cheese, but this is a vegetarian meal and this can be turned in from just an appetizer or like a accompaniment to an actual meal. And the more proteins and things that you put in it and carbs, you can make it into like an actual meal salad. You might, if anyone's ever been to a Portillo's and had a Barnelli's like chopped salad, this is kind of where my inspiration came from for that. I love that salad. It actually has some small noodles in it, which is like amazing. I love that. So if you do want to throw some actual noodles in there, that would be great too. Celatini, I believe, is what they use. But if you want to use elbow noodles, or you want to throw some orzo in there, or whatever's left over, even if you had leftover egg noodles from tonight's meal and you wanted to use the rest for something later, or hey, you know, they're a couple days old, you need to use them, throw them in a salad. That's great. Okay, so I've got my whatever this is, kielbasa. I just threw it in there. So you can see I've got some nice char. That char is going to be what gives the cauliflower lots of, or cauliflower. Oh man, the cabbage, lots of nice flavor. We want to get it nice and crispy. We still got some kind of veiny pieces in there. That's okay. What I'm going to do in a second here is put a lid on this. And that's going to help steam some of those. And then we'll open it up to cook it off the rest of the way. All right. Sorry, I keep hitting that. It's probably really loud. So we need a lid. And steam is going to be our friend to get that cabbage cooked the rest of the way. All right. So we've got our kielbasa skillet pasta that we're making. After that is done, we are going to toss in our pasta in, or it's depending on size restrictions. If it doesn't make sense to put your pasta into your skillet, you can put your skillet ingredients into your pasta. If at that point, and I'll reiterate this again, if at that point it looks a little dry, then you could put a little drizzle of olive oil or another pat of butter on top, and that will be great. Okay, we're gonna make our chopped salad. And again, whatever ingredients you want is going to be what, that's what works for you. So, there we go. I'm going to start with our romaine. I am going to use the same thing. Don't worry, I'm not feeding it to you. It's just my family, but it did have uncooked hot dogs on it basically. So, well, they're cooked hot dogs. So it could be worse. Just look away. Normally, if you're in a kitchen, a commercial kitchen, you would want to wash that. So when I am making this, and I didn't grab a bowl, so 1 second here. When I am making a chopped salad like this, I like to think about the size bites that I would have. So when I am taking a bite of this salad, I'm going to want a little bit of everything. So that means that I don't want big chunks of anything. So I want to keep my, so you can see it's kind of turning into almost like a shave. So I'm going to keep it nice and thin. I'm going to run out of room in that bowl in a second, I'm pretty sure. That's all right. I've got a bigger one here. So I want to keep these nice and fine, and that means that they're going to get lots of nice dressing on them. We haven't talked about our dressing yet, but we will in a second. I'm going to be making a vinaigrette for this. Okay, really quick, I wanted to say this before I forget. So you can see that this was starting to fall apart. I like to then take it and roll one piece of lettuce around the rest, because that'll help fold all of them together. You can continue to kind of roll it, and it'll help keep everything together. Hope you could see that now that I'm seeing the screen. I don't know if you could. So yeah, I can roll one piece of lettuce around the rest of it, and then it helps hold it together. So I like to chop this up really nice and fine. So that way it gets lots of nice pieces in amongst it. This smells burny, so let's give it a stir. Woo! Yeah, so I'm stirring, you can't see it, but over here in my cabbage, it is coming together nicely. It's starting to break down. I am going to take the lid off and leave it on. Think about what you did. And then we can cover that up. All right, so I just learned from TikTok, I learned a new way to do peppers. So it's very exciting for me anyway. And what it is you cut a slit in the side here, and then you go all around the inside. I don't know if anyone's a TikTok person, but all around the inside, around the seeds. And then you have these nice sheets of bell pepper that you can cut into, manageable chunks like this. And then you can just finely slice them. Again, just like with my lettuce, I'm going to keep them nice and thin. when you're wondering about which side of the bell pepper, this outside membrane, if your knife is not very sharp, your knife can just slip right off of it. So you want to cut a lot of times from the inside here. So I just checked, I checked my kielbasa, and it's nice, and it's getting warmed through. And then once it is all warmed through, that's when we can take the lid off and let it get a little crispy on that side. When you're thinking about how to adapt any sort of dish, I like to think about what kind of flavors I'm going for. Am I going for a Southwest? Am I going for Italian? Am I going for, whatever? And then you can think about seasonings. And then that a lot of times helps me think about what I want in it. But truly, more than flavors, what I base my menus on and what I base my cooking on is, what do I have in my pantry? I will tell you, I did not go to the grocery store before this program. All of the things that we are cooking tonight, I had in my house. And that either tells you that I keep too many things in my house, or you can kind of adapt whatever recipe. I think that's as many bell peppers as I want. You can adapt whatever recipe you have to whatever you have in your house. I keep things like, Donna had asked me ahead of time before the program about kind of what kind of things I keep in my pantry. Things I always have in my pantry: vegetable broth, chickpeas, tuna, anchovies, which are a weird one, but not everyone's an anchovy person. I feel like we used to see a lot of like weird, funny jokes about people who were having anchovies on pizza, but I love anchovies as a flavor vehicle. I use them in pastas or Caesar dressing or whatever. So I always have those. And you can find them on sale or whatever. But anyway, chickpeas, tuna, chicken broth, crushed tomatoes, because those are an easy base. You can put together a chili, you can put together, whatever you want right away. You can throw it together if you've got crushed tomatoes, a little bit of seasoning, and some beans. Tomato paste, because if I do want to throw together a tomato-based pasta, tomato paste is the number one thing that's going to get you a lot of flavor. And when you're cooking on a budget, it doesn't have to be expensive. As long as you have a lot of good flavor, it's going to make a big difference. So that's about all the red onion I'm going to put in there. I will save the rest of that for another time. So then we're going to move on. I'm going to switch cameras here and show you my pasta. All right. Woo! Steamy. All right, so we are raring to go here. We've got some nice caramelization. All right, we'll talk really quickly. I think we've talked in the past on programs about deglazing. And deglazing is when you add a little bit of liquid to a pot to get all these bits. And that's where a lot of the flavor is living. So we don't want to leave that behind. It'll also make it easier to clean your pan afterwards. So deglazing, you pour a little bit of liquid. You could use broth if you've got an open thing of broth. You could use wine. White wine would probably be my choice in this meal. And then this will also help get that butter and all that stuff into this, and that flavor into the pasta. All right, so we've got our pasta noodles. We're gonna start putting them in. Break them up. They did stick a little bit. And then we're going to start tossing them around. Depending on how many people you're feeding. So this was just over like 2/3 of a bag of pasta. You can, depending on how many people you're feeding, if they're protein eaters, things like that, think about how far you want this meal to go. We've got, I think, let's see, I did the numbers on it. This whole meal from Aldi's cost me $6.81. So if I'm feeding a family of 4 for $6.81, I think I'm doing a pretty good job. If I'm dividing that out, I'm unfortunately not good at math with a calculator, but think about that divided by 4. That's how much per person it costs to make this meal. If I wanted it to be less protein heavy, I can just add more noodles and it could go even farther. That might not be as filling, because that protein is what's going to help us get from meal to meal. but you know, it can go a long way. So then the only other kind of bougie thing I'm going to do here is I pulled some lemon thyme from my garden. And lemon thyme is just like regular thyme, T-H-Y-M-E. And I'm just going to put some of these lemon thyme leaves in here. It's going to brighten it up because right now we've got some very brown food. That's the nice thing about this. You can make it kind of all year round. Cabbage is it's a very hardy vegetable. So it's kind of all around all year, but it's very hardy. It maybe is a little heavy. So we're going to add this lemon thyme. There's a faster, more efficient way to do this, but I've evidently choosing the way of chaos. So just some leaves in there. We're going to put her on right at the end because we don't want to have that thyme. We want the green color from it. So I'm putting it on right at the end, and then we'll mix it in a little bit, and then it'll just bring a little bright freshness. This has got a very citrusy kind of aroma to it, this thyme does. So it's going to be like you added a little lemon zest or a little bit of, without it being too much. I have a daughter who always says that when I put lemon pasta or do lemon pasta or whatever, she says it's too sour. I don't like it. So, and she's 8. I made her sound like an infant. So lemon thyme is a nice choice for us because it gives you that kind of brightness without it being like a really citrusy, too overpowering kind of a thing. So it's just something to add because, you know, we're talking snap. You can buy herb plants that you can use, you know, you can use your snap to buy those herb plants. You can start these from seeds. Thyme is very good. I move my thyme in for the fall, so it lasts all winter, and then I put it back out in the summer. So there you go. We've got that going. I'm going to move this hot pot out of the way over to the side, and that's what I'm going to have for dinner tonight. 1 second here. All right, so we're going to finish up our chopped salad. Closing in on it, folks. The next thing we're going to do is going to add some chickpeas into this. There we are. We're going to add our cheese. If you want, again, if you wanted this to be like a meal, you know, that's why we add the cheese. You can also add some salami or something like that, summer sausage, if that's what you got, whatever you got. Really, it's a great versatile salad that you can just use for just about anything. If you wanted it to have a little bit of a crunch to it, you can add a nut, you could add some croutons. That crunch really kind of helps break up the textures, but that onion is going to be a nice element of crunch as well. So I'm going to do about a half a block of mozzarella. You know, I didn't add any cabbage. I think I'm going to leave it out for now, and I'm going to save that cabbage for something else. And nice big chunks of cheese. And now we're going to make a vinaigrette. And if you've never made a vinaigrette before, there's a couple easy elements to a vinaigrette that you can do. Some of my stuff out of the way here. Vinaigrette is always going to have a couple necessary ingredients. You always need olive oil. Usually if we're going to be picky, extra virgin is great, but you can use regular olive oil too. It's just going to change the flavor of it. And then you want some flavor additives and some acid. Whatever acid you choose is up to you. Today I'm choosing white wine vinegar and a little bit of mustard, so white wine vinegar and a little bit of mustard and olive oil. If you wanted to use an acid, like, hey, you want to do a Southwest salad, you choose lime juice. That's a great choice. You could use apple cider vinegar, depending on what you're putting in there. You could put, red wine vinegar, lemon, so just about anything. And then your olive oil. So we're going to do about a 1/4 cup of olive oil. Pouring, should have measured this out ahead of time. It's thrilling TV. So we're going to do a little bit of olive oil, and I am going to emulsify. And when I say emulsify, it means I'm going to take an oil and mix it together to make a full, to combine 2 oils. in order for it to emulsify correctly, I need to, measuring with my heart, folks, look away. I need to mix the mustard, about 2 teaspoons of mustard. I need to mix the mustard and the vinegar ahead of time. I'm using a stone ground mustard, again, to this cooking show brought to you by Aldi's. I'm using a stone ground mustard just because I like the flavor of it. I like the texture. I'm going to mix that acid together. It's going to help liquefy. It's going to make that vinegar easier to mix in. Just like with anything, you know, the mustard is going to have a lot of those flavors. You may want to add a little salt, taste it. So here we go, the easiest vinaigrette ever. If you wanted to, as far as flavor additives, if you don't want to add mustard, you don't like the flavor of mustard, you can add garlic, you can add spices, you could do some herbs from your garden. I actually did bring some oregano that I'm going to put in here because I think it'll go really good. So you can kind of see we've got it all mixed together. It's this nice thick texture, and then we're going to add it to our salad, and we'll let it sit here for a second. If you are worried about sogginess, I understand. Sogginess is real. Sogginess is going to come from that lettuce sitting too long in the dressing and breaking down. I get that. You can wait to put the dressing on until right before we're going to eat this tonight. I don't mind a little sog to my salad, but things like cabbage, cabbages, kales, they need that acid to help break down some of their tough fibers. So that might be something if you're going to make it and bring it to a party or have it sit overnight or you're prepping for the week, maybe something like kale or cabbage would be the idea, because then it wouldn't break down as easily. A lot of folks, you know, you'll see salad in a jar or whatever, and they'll put the dressing in with like at the bottom with like the chickpeas and that kind of thing. And then the lettuce is at the top, and then they dump it into a bowl to eat it. So this is just a really pretty hearty salad. Again, you can switch everything around that you might want for whatever your ingredients are, whatever your dietary restrictions. I actually might add a couple of bright red grape tomatoes because I think those would look really pretty. I just happen to have some, and they're clean, which is always really helpful. So you can kind of see just the addition of some extra color really makes it nice and bright and beautiful. All right, I think that we're kind of rounded out tonight. If anyone wants to see my cooked apples here up close, we've got a couple different varieties here. Oops, I dropped one in my salad. You can see we've got a thicker one that hasn't cooked as much and a thinner one. Get this guy out of there. But nice, even it's got some nice chew to it. Even the broken down ones are still not falling apart because we chose those Granny Smiths. And they taste great, and they're still warm. So I hope that everyone has some good ideas for some things they can do, either just shopping on a budget or shopping not on a budget or using their SNAP card or anything like that. I hope that some folks got some good ideas for things they can do with a skillet pasta or a salad. And if anyone has any questions, absolutely shout them out or put them in the chat, whatever you want to do.
Well, I'm here as usual, Natalie, you know that.
Hi. I was waiting for you.
I wanted to add, you did cover things that you routinely keep in your pantry to tide you over no matter any eventuality in the kitchen.
Yes.
Let's round out our hour. Actually, we're already rounded, but
look at that.
Give our audience 2 tips on how to keep produce fresh.
Okay, so I get that question a lot. I get it about herbs. I get it about lettuces. My best way to keep some things fresh in your, like things like lettuces and herbs, I like to, if I'm going to cut them up, I want to use them within a couple of days. If they're whole, I like to wrap them with a wet paper towel and put them in my drawer. You can also wrap them. The thing that exposure to air is one of the things that really hurts fruits and vegetables. So you want to keep them in that crisper drawer. So a lot of times with fruits, I like to only wash what I'm using at that time. So like berries, I'll take out what I'm using that night. You know, a lot of us, we get home and we wash that whole container of berries, but that's exposing it to bacteria. It's exposing it to moisture. They've been packed with the least amount of moisture possible for the grocery store. So we want to keep the moisture away from them for the long period of time. So washing them right before you use them is a big tip for me. We definitely noticed some longer longevity with berries when we wash them right before we use them. And then wrapping lettuces and greens in like a wet paper towel after I've washed them kind of helps keep them nice and fresh. If I am pulling a whole bunch of herbs in from the garden, a lot of times I'll keep them in a vase, the cut end in a vase, like a little cup in my fridge, because then they're still getting water and they're still trying to grow. It'll maybe lengthen it by like a day or 2 days, but it is something, you know what I mean?
That is good. I wondered, I know you were giving us the mix and match versions of all these recipes tonight, but do you have a basic that we can include on the website with your recording?
I'll put, I'll send you a recipe. A lot of times, especially for things when I'm trying to cook on a budget, I use a website called Budget Bites, BYTES. And Beth Monsell does a lot of great things about breaking down the cost of a recipe by person. And she'll tell you about some things to make it more expensive, less expensive, things like that. So I will send, I know that there's one that's for a skillet, kind of a skillet pasta that's similar. And I know that she has a chopped salad one. So I will put both of those on, send them to you, Donna.
And that is great. And we'll all look forward to cooking and enjoying Natalie's recipes. I know that Natalie wants to enjoy dinner with her family now. So we're going to sign off for the night. Thank you to our audience for attending. I hope you've all enjoyed it and are planning on what's for dinner tomorrow. Please complete the short pop-up survey that will appear when we close the Zoom connection. And as always, we value your input. Back to you, Natalie, for closing comments.
Thanks so much for everybody for coming tonight. I hope that you have some good ideas out there, and that even, you know, if you're not using SNAP or you're not operating on a budget, you still have had some fun with some of these recipes. Have a good day. And if I don't see anybody, have a good summer.
Thanks, Natalie. And thank you to our audience, and we'll see you next time. Good night.
Bye.